St Francis Xavier is the saint we remember today. He was a great apostle and evangelizer in the mid-1500s, and the cathedral in Green Bay, Wisconsin has been named after him, the Cathedral of St Francis Xavier, because he was a Jesuit, and it was Jesuit missionaries who came into that part of the Midwest back in the mid-1600s to evangelize these areas. And evidently, St. Francis Xavier took very literally the words of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark when Jesus said, "Go into the whole world." Now, this is the mid-1500s, and among educated people at the time, the word was out that Columbus has discovered a whole new continent, and that you could get to the east by going west, and you get to the west by going east. That excited people for exploration. This is the time of Magellan, who took a ship, the 3 ships, they lost 2 along the way, and they circumnavigated the globe. And when they got back to their port in Portugal, he was looking at his records, and they were 1 day off. And they went over the records again, and they were 1 day off. And they could not find that day until they realized, of course it's 1 day off. We went around the whole world. We crossed this international date line. So time of exploration. And so St. Francis Xavier set out to the east to bring Christianity there, to India and to China and to Japan. This morning when I was praying the Divine Office, I came across this letter of St. Francis Xavier to St. Ignatius, and I want to read it to you. He writes to St. Ignatius back in Rome. "We have visited the villages of the new converts who accepted the Christian religion a few years ago. No Portuguese live here. The country is so utterly barren and poor. The native Christians have no priests. They know only that they are Christians. There's nobody to say Mass for them, nobody to teach them the Creed, the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and the commandments of God's law. I have not stopped since the day I arrived." He's writing from India. "I conscientiously made the rounds of the villages. I bathed in the sacred waters all the children who had not yet been baptized. This means that I have purified a very large number of children so young that, as the saying goes, they couldn't tell their right hand from their left. The older children would not let me say my office or eat or sleep until I taught them one prayer or another. Then I began to understand the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. I could not refuse so devout a request without failing in devotion myself. I taught them first the confession of faith in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, then the Apostles' Creed, the Our Father, and Hail Mary. I noticed among them persons of great intelligence. If only someone could educate them in the Christian way of life, I have no doubt that they would make excellent Christians. Many, many people hereabouts are not becoming Christians for one reason only. There's nobody to make them Christians. Again and again, I've thought of going around the universities all over Europe, especially Paris. That's where we met St. Ignatius of Loyola. And everywhere crying out like a madman, riveting the attention of those with more learning than charity. What a tragedy! How many souls are being shut out of heaven and falling into hell thanks to you? That's not very subtle, is it? You could get away with that in the 1500s. There was no political correctness back then. I wish, he's writing St. Ignatius, it's an amazing artifact we have here. I wish they would work as hard as this as they do with their books, and so settle their account with God for their learning and the talents entrusted to them. This thought would certainly stir most of them to meditate on spiritual realities, to listen actively to what God is saying to them. They would forget their own desires, their human affairs, and give themselves over entirely to God's will and His choice. They would cry out with all their heart, "Lord, I am here. What do you want me to do? Send me anywhere you like, even to India." And so he went to India, and then he went to China, and he went to Japan. Amazing. You know, they didn't have cell phones back then. They didn't have Starlink. They didn't have Elon Musk. If you got in a ship, it was dangerous because you couldn't tell longitude. You could tell latitude, how far north and south. So all of the mariner maps are inherently unreliable. There was shipwreck on a regular occasion because they didn't know if they were going to go into a reef. I mean, this was daring stuff back then. And he was impelled by the love of Christ to bring the truth to others because he knew what it did in his own life. And we have that same spirit here today at Relevant Radio. And it all comes from here, from Jesus and the Holy Eucharist, who's truly present. I've told people before, the symbolism, the architecture of this chapel, that's heaven, this is earth. Heaven and earth meet in the Holy Eucharist. And when we receive Jesus in the Holy Eucharist, we are united to him in heaven, and we can get as much grace as we are hungry for. And you and I could become another St. Francis Xavier.